Aloha, I'm Sean Lether. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and also put your questions in the comments for Dr. Bruce. I'm honored to welcome my good friend, Dr. Bruce E. Kaloski. Dr. Kaloski is a recognized expert in hypnotherapy, motivation psychology, and past life regression, with over 47 years of experience helping individuals unlock their full potential. Known as America's hypnotist to the stars, he has worked with leaders in business, sports, entertainment to create lasting behavioral change through subconscious reprogramming. He developed the acclaimed multi-facet motivational programming method, now used by over 13,000 practitioners worldwide. He has authored 17 books, served on university faculties, and created more than 70 professional training programs. Dr. Bruce holds doctorates in counseling psychology and clinical hypnotherapy, and is the president of the American Board of Clinical and Medical Hypnotherapy, and has held leadership roles in several national organizations. Combining science, experience, and practical tools, Dr. Kaloski delivers powerful insights into consciousness. You can learn more about Dr. Bruce at drkaloski.com. Welcome, Bruce. So nice to have you back.
Oh, it's so great to be back, Sean. It's been much too long. Was it a couple of years ago that we did that one?
Yeah.
Wow, how time flies.
Yeah, it's going fast. So why don't you take it off? Maybe a short intro for those that might not know who you are or haven't been here.
Yeah, no, that intro was fine. Let's jump right into it. You know, I've always had an inquiring mind by nature. What is that? Well, what was that newspaper says? Inquiring minds need to know. Is that the Philadelphia Inquirer? I think
the National Enquirer.
National Enquirer, yeah. Inquiring minds need to know. Anyway, I've always wondered, and some people don't have that inquiring mind. I've always wondered, well, how does reincarnation work? You know, from a mechanistic standpoint, I was never satisfied with the spiritual explanations, metaphysical explanations which involved a deity. Some people, they don't have that kind of mind. They just said, oh yeah, well, reincarnation, it just is. It just is. So one of the things that I would like to do tonight is advance my own unified theory of reincarnation, which will take it out of the realm of the New Age, metaphysical, wings of woo-woo land domain, and provide what I hope is a theoretical quantum physical framework for the concept of reincarnation. I'm going to suggest how reincarnation might work on a practical, fundamental, and mechanical level, and how it might be supported by certain principles of quantum physics. And so let's begin with a brief discussion of consciousness, because it's central to our discussion here tonight. Now, most of those with a spiritual orientation consider consciousness to be synonymous to the soul. And what I want to do is show its relationship to the impermanence of death, the afterlife, and what might lie beyond the afterlife, namely reincarnation. Now, since the people joining us today most probably do not subscribe to the local consciousness theory, which says that consciousness does not survive the death of the body, we'll just jump directly to the non-local consciousness school, which theorizes that consciousness is not solely dependent on brain activity, but it's a universal and interconnected phenomenon, which transcends individual brains, exists as a separate entity from the physical body, can exist beyond it. And furthermore, it's a fundamental aspect of the universe. And I'll explain that last part in a little while. Quantum mechanics, with this observation of something called entanglement, which we'll also be getting more into later on, is often invoked to support the possibility of a non-local nature of consciousness. So in short, when the body dies, consciousness ceases to be in the now dead brain, but continues to exist independent of the brain as an external property of the universe itself. You see, our consciousness tricks us into perceiving a false duality of self and others, when in fact there's only unity. We aren't separate from other aspects of the universe, but rather we're an integral and we're an inextricable part of them. And when we die, according to this theory, we transcend the human experience of consciousness and its illusion of duality, and we merge with the universe's entire and unified property of consciousness. So if you think about that, ironically, only in death can we be fully conscious, if you look at it that way, which lends new meaning to that. Remember that New Age mantra, one with the universe? This lends new meaning to that. So enter two of the most forward-thinking and controversial researchers in the study of human consciousness. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, who's an American anesthesiologist, and he's a professor at the University of Arizona, and he's also director for the Center for Consciousness Studies, and Sir Roger Penrose, a British mathematician, mathematical physicist, philosopher of science, and he is also a Nobel laureate in physics. Work done separately by them and together by Hameroff and Penrose have led them to theorize that upon the death of the body, the quantum information that inhabits the nervous system leaves the body and dissipates into the universe. And that is a view consistent with the first law of thermodynamics, the law of conservation of energy, which you all remember from your high school physics, I'm sure. And that states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but only transferred or transformed from one form to another. So in the view of Hameroff and Penrose, consciousness resides in what they call the microtubules of the brain cells. Now, these are protein polymers inside brain neurons. So now we have a theory of where consciousness might be located in the body. They theorize that these microtubules are the primary sites of quantum processing in consciousness. So in the context of consciousness and its survival, this implies that the energy associated with consciousness would also abide by this law as a form of energy. And why should it be any different? And then be dispersed to the universe at large in a non-cohesive form. So upon death, this information, so let's think of it as information, consciousness, is released from the body, meaning that consciousness goes with it. They argue that our experience of consciousness is the result of quantum gravity effects in these microtubules. And that's a theory which they call orchestrated objective reduction. So if the patient dies, let's say someone gets sick, patient dies, and then is resuscitated or revived, this quantum information can go back into the microtubules. And the patient says, hey, I had a near-death experience. If they're not revived and the patient dies and can't be revived, then it's possible that this quantum information can exist outside the body, maybe indefinitely, as what we know as a soul. So the energy of your consciousness potentially gets recycled back into a different body at some point, and in the meantime, it exists outside of the physical body. Before it gets recycled back, it exists outside the physical body on some other level of reality. Let's use the analogy of I like this one, a television set and the transmission signal. Now, television is required, the television that we watch is required to decode the signal, but it doesn't create the signal, does it? No. That comes from the television station itself. In a similar way, the brain may be required for consciousness to express itself. It's a conduit, like a TV set, but may not be the source of consciousness. So if this theory is that the body receives consciousness in the same way that a television receives signals is true, it has to then follow that consciousness doesn't end at the death of the physical vehicle. Just as the signals don't die if we destroy the cable box or the television or the radio, for that matter. In fact, consciousness exists outside of the constraints of time and space. It's able to be anywhere, in the body, outside of the body. In other words, it's non-local, in the same sense that quantum objects are non-local. Now, it starts to get really interesting here. Scientists have long known that matter, like electrons and protons, produce events only when they are observed. In the real-world example, it's known as the double or dual-slit experiment. That's a cornerstone of quantum mechanics, which, by the way, this left even Einstein scratching his head. This experiment has been performed a number of times, many different ways. When scientists watch a particle pass through two slits in a barrier, the particle behaves like a bullet and it goes through one hole or the other. However, when you don't watch it, it acts like a wave and goes through both holes at the same time. So the light's behavior changes. The only difference is that it is being observed. Now keep that in mind. The Copenhagen interpretation, as first posed by physicist Niels Bohr back in 1920, says that a quantum particle doesn't exist in one state or another, but in all of its possible states at the same time. It's only when we observe its state that a quantum particle is essentially forced to choose one probability. And that's the state that we happen to observe. The way, as Alice said in the novel Alice in Wonderland, it gets curiouser and curiouser. According to some views of quantum physics, whenever the universe reaches a decision point in which two outcomes are equally probable, the universe splits so that both outcomes have equal existence. And now we enter the fascinating realm of alternate or parallel universes. And we'll take a closer look at that subject shortly and show how it ties into reincarnation. So if you've been listening, the viewers out there have been listening, and I hope that you have, the question you should be asking yourself is, how can a particle somewhere out there change its behavior depending on solely whether you watch it or you don't watch it? So according to quantum physicists, the answer is simple. It's a principle known as the primacy of the observer. In that primacy of the observer principle, reality is a process that involves our consciousness and our observation. The term primacy of the observer in quantum physics refers to the fundamental role that observation plays in determining the state of any quantum system. So in the quantum realm, particles exist in a state of superposition, meaning they can be in multiple states at once until they're observed, until you see them. Once an observation is made, the superposition collapses into a single state. This principle suggests that the act of observing not only reveals the state of a quantum system, but actually influences it. See, the primacy of the observer proposes that the observer and the observed are entwined in a veritable dance of creation. Dr. Robert Lanza, a name which all of you should be familiar with. He's a medical doctor and a scientist who was voted the third most important scientist alive by the New York Times. Now, he echoes this theory. His study of physics, quantum mechanics, and astrophysics led him to propose his theory of biocentrism. And this teaches that life and consciousness are fundamental to the universe, not the other way around. The biocentrism asserts that it's consciousness that creates the material universe, not the other way around. The material universe does not create consciousness. Consciousness creates and created the universe. As the conventional view in implying consciousness existed prior to the existence of matter. So basically, that's what he's saying. Consciousness existed prior to matter. So let me repeat that. Intelligence, consciousness existed prior to the existence of matter. Now think about it. That's a pretty heady thought. The biocentric theory implies that death of consciousness is an illusion. It only exists as a concept because people identify themselves with their body, don't they? Don't they identify? Oh, I do. We all identify themselves with our bodies. But according to Lanza, we believe in death because we associate ourselves with our body, and we know that bodies die. End of story. Bodies die. Only that story is false. And a long series of experiments suggests death is not the terminal event we think it is. Rather, it just represents a break in the, let's call it the linear continuity of space and time. Lanza, and many others, also believe that multiple universes can exist simultaneously. See, actually, the multiverse idea, as it was called, that was first advanced back in 1955 by Dr. Hugh Everett in his graduate thesis at Princeton University. It essentially posits that at any given moment, the universe divides into countless similar versions. And the next moment, these newborn universes, or some call them baby universes, split in a familiar fashion. So in one universe, you might be attending this webinar, this Zoom meeting, while in another, you might be reading a book. In another, you might be walking your dog. So as Everett explained, the triggering factor for these multiplying worlds is our actions. If we make some actions or some choices, one universe instantly splits into two different versions or outcomes, where both possibilities happen on different alternate branches. So the crux of the matter lies in the role of observation or measurement. According to that multiple worlds interpretation, it's not merely Everett's decision point that determines the branch, but rather the act of observation itself. So remember, we discussed the primacy of the observer. When a quantum event is observed, the universe splits to accommodate every possible outcome of that event. Each branch represents a different outcome, and that creates a vast multiverse of possibilities. So every choice we make could potentially lead to a different version of our lives, playing out in parallel universes, and every possible history and future can exist simultaneously in these branching universes. So I'm babbling on here. What does all this have to do with reincarnation, the soul, the life, and life after death? Well, according to the multiverse theory, in one universe, the body can be dead, while in another, it continues to exist, absorbing consciousness which migrated into that universe. This means that the consciousness or soul of a dead person, while traveling through that infamous tunnel, which we all know about, and I'm talking about the tunnel which NDEs report, as well as those who experience past life regression, the consciousness of the soul ends up not in hell, not in heaven, but eventually in a world similar to the one he or she once inhabited, but this time alive, and so on, ad infinitum. And there's an abundance of places or other universes where our soul could migrate after death, according to the theory of neo-biocentrism. And in that abundance of places, a soul may choose to incarnate into one that may be as close as the one they just left, according to another theory. And that is a very intriguing one. So this posits that we live our lives, past ones included, within certain time periods, generally 100 to 200 years or so. For example, from let's say 1850 to 2050. And we live a number of lives within that time period. Well, we live them learning the lessons, having experiences we signed up to learn and experience before we move on to another time period. Each of those lives are lived within an alternate universe or time period, almost indistinguishable from each other, except that each alternate universe was created at a critical decision point or an observation point. Remember Everett's theory, at an observation point. In this paradigm, we can reincarnate as ourselves. So Sean reincarnates in another life as Sean. Bruce reincarnates as Bruce, if we choose, into an alternate universe, virtually indistinguishable from the one we just departed, except for the fact that we might have pursued different careers. We might have gone to different schools. We might have married different spouses in each incarnation or universe, which of course would lead to an entirely different set of lessons and experiences. So in this paradigm, the phenomenon we know as deja vu, and I know you've all heard that term. The term deja vu translates from the French as already seen. It makes deja vu literally true. We tend to think of deja vu as evidence of a spontaneous recall of past lives. And it may indeed be that, whereby we have these things that I know that this has happened before. I know I've been there before. And then we use the explanation, well, yeah, we've been there before because we were there in another lifetime as a different person. But it might be It might be that we have already seen and experienced that event or situation as ourselves in a past life, lived in an alternate timeline, close enough to the present one, so to have virtually the same events and situations. Of course, that would assume that we have the ability to reincarnate into the past. And this is another thing that, matter of fact, I did a show on this. I did a live, and people, you can find that where I explore, is it possible to reincarnate into the past in my on my YouTube channel. I have all the, I regularly do lives in my Facebook group, and one of the lives I did was, is it possible to reincarnate into the past? You have to admit, that is an interesting theory. Now, it really gets interesting when we consider the theories of quantum entanglement, string theory, and quantum foam. These offer fascinating insights into the nature of the universe and the potential interconnectedness of all these things. And we touched upon that a little while ago when we talked about the one with the universe theme, right? While these theories aren't typically used to explain the phenomenon of reincarnation, I'm going to use them in offering a theory of how reincarnation just might work. So let's briefly discuss these concepts, and then after we've discussed them and got a basic, very basic understanding of them, relate them to reincarnation. So first is quantum entanglement. Simplest way that I might use to describe quantum entanglement is that it's a phenomenon where particles become interconnected in such a way that the state of one, no matter the distance from the other, can instantaneously affect the state of its entangled partner. It's as if they share a mysterious, invisible bond that transcends space and time. Now, this isn't just theory. Quantum entanglement has been both observed and proven to work, not only at very short distances like this, but at very great distances. And I'm talking light years here. This concept challenges classical notions of causality and locality because the entangled particles seem to communicate faster than the speed of light. And as we all know, that's supposed to be impossible, except in the worlds of Star Trek and Star Wars, right? Einstein dubbed this phenomenon spooky action at a distance. Okay, quantum entanglement. Let's dip our toes into string theory, which aims to unify our understanding of the fundamental forces of nature. String theory, simplified, suggests that the fundamental particles that we once thought were point-like dots are actually tiny vibrating strings. These strings can vibrate at different frequencies, a lot like the strings on a musical instrument can produce different notes, guitar, violin, whatever. This theory also proposes the existence of additional dimensions beyond the familiar three dimensions that we're familiar with. Interestingly enough, the other day I saw an article which claimed that scientists were able to successfully establish a quantum state which allowed a particle to traverse between dimensions by utilizing very precise lasers and sophisticated mathematical models. Now, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is a hoax, but it is fascinating. Okay, so we just talked about the quantum entanglement and string theory. Next is quantum foam. And you all know what foam is. It's that stuff that sits on top of your beer, right? Well, actually, then, in the world of quantum physics, this refers to a space-time foam. The term was coined back in 1955 by a Dr. John Wheeler, who was a relativity theorist at Princeton University. Quantum foam is that tumultuous, frothy sea of energy and particles that theoretically make up the fabric of space-time at the Planck scale. Now, the Planck scale is the smallest scale of the universe. So tiny that it's impossible to observe directly, even with the most powerful microscopes. Quantum foam is a theoretical concept in quantum mechanics that describes how space and time fluctuate on a very small scale. So this concept suggests that space-time isn't smooth, but instead it's a frothy, ever-changing landscape of tiny dimensions, fluctuations, and wormholes. These fluctuations occur because particles and energy can spontaneously appear and disappear at this incredibly small scale. And that leads to dynamic, foamy, bubbly nature of space-time. I wasn't kidding now when I mentioned the foam on top of a glass of beer, because sometimes some scientists compare quantum foam to the bubbles in a glass of freshly poured beer, which appear and disappear in a constantly changing way. Quantum gravity models predict that space-time is a seething foam of tiny regions where minuscule new dimensions are formed, and they unfurl and they furl back in on themselves, spontaneously appearing, disappearing with inconceivable speed and quickness. These regions blink into and out of existence like the bubbles in the foam of a freshly poured beer. Next time you pour yourself a beer, take a look at those bubbles, how they disappear, and then all of a sudden they reappear. Now, let's weave reincarnation into this theoretical tapestry. As we know, reincarnation is seen as the transfer of consciousness of or soul from one physical body to another after death. If we consider consciousness as an emergent property of complex interactions within the brain, it raises questions about how consciousness could be transferred or persist beyond the physical body. And that's also my not so subtle way of leading into my unified theory of reincarnation. And this is where we can incorporate, in turn, the concepts of quantum entanglement, string theory, and quantum foam, as they might figure into the mechanics of reincarnation. Okay, first, quantum entanglement. Imagine consciousness, if you will, as a type of informational pattern that's entangled with the universe, is not bound by space or time. Instead, is part of a larger interconnected web that transcends physical boundaries. In this view, the entanglement of consciousness could offer a potential mechanism for its continuation or transfer between different bodies or incarnations. In quantum physics, entangled particles share information suggesting an underlying unity. In the same way, the idea of reincarnation might be thought of as a process where the information or essence of a person is carried forward into a new life. So if you imagine consciousness as a kind of quantum information, the process of reincarnation could be seen as a form of information transfer, right? Information transfer, where certain aspects of one's being are preserved and they continue, albeit in another body. Or maybe not in the body, maybe in a disembodied state. Similar to transferring digital files, which are essentially bits of information from one computer to another. We might consider the possibility that quantum entanglement can connect particles across vast distances. If we consider that as a possibility, and that's been proven in experiments, could there also be a form of spiritual or consciousness entanglement that connects the essence or soul of a person to a new physical form? Okay? Could the energy or consciousness of a person be so entangled with the fabric of the universe that it finds a new manifestation in another life? In other words, finds a new body. Something to think about. Okay, now let's take a look at string theory and reincarnation. If you remember, string theory offers a framework where all particles are manifestations of tiny vibrating strings. This vibrational nature could be seen as a physical counterpart to the spiritual journey of souls, vibrating at different frequencies through various incarnations. So in this view, the soul's journey through various lifetimes is guided by the fundamental mechanical principles of vibration and resonance that govern all of existence. It's just not helter-skelter. It's guided by principles of vibration and resonance. Some versions of string theory involve the concept of the multiverse, where multiple parallel universes exist. We discussed that. If we consider these additional dimensions as realms beyond our conventional understanding, they might provide pathways or channels through which consciousness could travel or transition between different states of existence. So when we say so-and-so transition, instead of saying they died or they kicked the bucket, we actually might be speaking literally and not metaphorically. They did transition. These dimensions, or the multiverse, could host different realities or realms where consciousness transitions, intertwines, and interacts in intricate ways, including the possibility of reincarnation. Last is quantum foam. Remember that tumultuous, frothy sea of energy and particles that theoretically make up the fabric of space-time at the Planck scale. Here are three ways in which quantum mechanics, and by extension, quantum foam, could theoretically be tied to reincarnation. Number one, conservation of energy and consciousness. Some theories propose that consciousness itself might have a quantum basis. Remember Penrose and Hameroff's orchestrated objective reduction theory, which suggests that the mind or soul is not bound by classical physics, but by quantum phenomena. If consciousness were a quantum process, as Hameroff and Penrose propose, it might interact with a quantum foam, or it might exist within it. So a consciousness might exist within that foam on top of the beer, potentially leading to a form of quantum rebirth across different realities. Second is quantum information in the universe. Information about a person's life, experiences, or soul upon death could theoretically be released from the microtubules of the brain. Remember those, the microtubules? Preserved in the quantum foam, and then recycled into new forms of existence. So instead of dissipating into the universe at large, it gets preserved in the quantum foam. And then, in other words, reincarnated via quantum entanglement and string theory. So the quantum foam holds the information released from the microtubules in this theory, and then the soul, the consciousness or soul reincarnates through quantum entanglement and string theory. And third, timelessness and the cycle of existence. In quantum mechanics, time at the quantum level behaves differently than the classical world. In some interpretations, time could be nonlinear or cyclical at the quantum level. That could suggest that existence, rather than being a one-way street, may involve multiple cycles or iterations or reincarnation. So from this perspective, quantum foam, which is seen as a seething foam of tiny regions where minuscule new dimensions blink in and out of existence, like the bubbles on that foam of in the foam of that freshly poured beer, could be seen as the ever-changing canvas through which multiple lifetimes or realities could emerge and dissolve, like those tiny bubbles. So let's further connect the dots and link all of this to consciousness and the observer's role in reality. If you remember, in quantum mechanics, the primacy of the observer posits that the act of observation can alter the state of a quantum system. This idea has led some to speculate about the role of consciousness in shaping reality itself. If the fabric of reality at its most fundamental level is subject to observation, could consciousness, in some way, influence the very structure of space-time or the unfolding of events by actually sculpting reality? In other words, making our own reality. Now that opens up philosophical discussions about our ability to influence or shape the physical world, not just through actions and decisions, but at a deeper, more fundamental level. This may provide us with a logical explanation for what we call manifestation. Okay? So such as in what happens after we exit the physical world. In other words, the afterlife. So some have hypothesized that if consciousness can interact with the fabric of reality at a quantum level, could the quantum foam be that bridge between our physical existence and a non-physical afterlife, in which we now get to sculpt or design incarnations. So, linking this concept to consciousness and the primacy of the observer, we might then suggest that this relationship implies consciousness is more fundamental than the physical universe itself, or that reality, in some sense, is created by ourselves. The idea that one's consciousness can create its own reality in both this life and the afterlife, including the concept of reincarnation, implies that the script of our lives, our afterlives, our subsequent incarnations, are not just set pieces, but are actively shaped by our perceptions, our observations, and our consciousness. And is indeed a script, just like a script writer sometimes writes on the fly. They can be taken onto the set of a movie or the set of a TV show and make changes in the script. So do we, through our observation, make changes in the script of our lives. So just as the observer effect in quantum physics suggests that the act of observation can alter the outcome of an event, remember the dual slit experiment, this suggests, to me at least, that our conscious intentions and beliefs can shape our reality, both in the physical world and possibly in the afterlife. If electrons can exist in multiple states, and they can choose based on observation, maybe our potential or alternate realities are just waiting for us to observe or imagine them into being, suggesting a universe where the mind plays a central role in creating the fabric of reality across lifetimes and universes, and all based on the scientific principles of quantum mechanics. So at the level of quantum foam, some physicists speculate that tiny wormholes could form and disappear spontaneously, possibly connecting different points in space-time. Some suggest that these wormholes could, in theory, link different universes or allow for travel between alternate realities. These wormholes are often conceptualized as quantum bridges, which makes one wonder if the tunnel and the white light, and those are both staples in NDEs and past life regressions, might be consciousness experiencing and perceiving these wormholes and quantum bridges within the context of quantum foam. And as for reincarnation, if we consider consciousness as a fundamental aspect of the universe, then the quantum foam could be involved in the transmission or transformation of consciousness across different realms or existences. Now, this could provide a quantum physical framework for the idea of reincarnation, where consciousness moves from one state of being to another, potentially even across different universes within the multiverse, via these quantum bridges, which we perceive as tunnels. Now, of course, this also all begs the question of what or who determines this transition or transfer of consciousness. Why did my consciousness go into my body, or fetus, as the current theory suggests, instead of yours? Who was the cosmic traffic cop who made that decision? You go here, you go there, you go here, and sent us on our merry way? Or did we, meaning our consciousness or soul, make that determination during the period between lives? Or is there something else at play here? Now, one answer may lie in something called the phenomenon of spontaneous self-organization. You've probably heard this one before, but in a different way. All things in our universe, at a microscopic level, are constantly in motion, vibrating, oscillating. Even objects that appear to be stationary are, in fact, vibrating, oscillating, resonating at various frequencies. If we consider the soul as a form of energy or consciousness, could it not be akin to the vibrational patterns described by string theory? Just like strings vibrate at different frequencies to manifest as different particles, maybe the soul's energy vibrates in a pattern unique to that soul. My soul vibrates differently than your soul and the next person's soul, and then transcend physical death and influence its manifestation in new physical bodies. Also, something interesting happens when different vibrating things come together. In a kind of quantum entanglement tango, they'll often start, after a little while, to vibrate together at the same frequency, regardless, as we've seen, of physical distance between the two, be it millimeters or light years. This sync up, sometimes in ways that can seem mysterious, or as Einstein once put it, spooky. One theory, which has been offered, is that there exist certain vibrational compatibilities or sympathetic matches that our soul or consciousness are drawn to when in this disembodied state, with a variety of factors involved, such things as past relationships with members of our soul group, resonance with certain time periods and certain places, genetics, skill sets, body types, lifestyles, and so on. Now, this certainly lends a new significance to the Italian word simpatico. So with this theory, we, or our souls, are the traffic cops. And along with being the traffic cops, it turns out that, as we've seen, we may indeed be the grand architects of our cavalcade of lives. So, in plain English, what I'm suggesting is that it might be the case that we, our soul, our consciousness, possesses the ability to design our next life, A, while we're still living in this one, and or B, in the afterlife, meaning the between life state, and C, considering the non-linearity of time and theorized existence of alternate realities, we can also choose to reincarnate into whatever time period we wish, and even do a replay of the life that we just lived. It's a tantalizing thought, and emerges the realms of physics, spirituality, and the internal mysteries of existence and consciousness. So to wrap things up, reincarnation is a complex phenomenon that encompasses physical, philosophical, spiritual, and cultural aspects, which may or may not align with the language, principles, or mathematical framework of quantum entanglement, string theory, quantum foam, primacy of the observer, vibrational compatibilities, sympathetic matches, and the other theories we discussed. But it is interesting and it's fun to speculate, and it gives us an excellent starting point to continue this exploration. From a personal standpoint, as a past life regression therapist, I have found that understanding the possible quantum mechanics behind reincarnation can significantly enhance any therapist's effectiveness during past life regression sessions, as it has mine in a ways too numerous to mention in the time that we have left here. So suffice it to say, quantum mechanics, with its principles of entanglement, superposition, the observer effect, string theory, quantum foam, nonlinearity of time, offers a profound framework for equipping therapists with a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the soul's journey. And it's enabled me, at least, after more than 40 plus years in this profession, to facilitate a more successful and transformative experience for my clients. Of course, for the time being, everything I've said here remains a fascinating thought experiment that invites us to consider the interconnectedness of all things, from the smallest particles to the grandest souls. You know, it's kind of a reminder, as the noble bard once wrote, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Okay, Sean, we can open this to discussion and to questions. John, you there?
I'm there. I was just typing. Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions and great conversation so far. Really enjoying this. So I'm going to go through a couple of the first questions. And everyone just submit your questions to the chat, and we'll try to ask Bruce whatever you would like to know. So Tim is wondering, says what Bruce says, it makes a lot of sense. Does he believe that consciousness is fundamental, that it is an ultimate unity? If so, then how is it that we see ourselves as individual and separate from other beings?
Well, because, yeah, I do believe that consciousness is fundamental to the universe, but we see ourselves as separate because that's the only way we can see ourselves. I can't, have you ever wondered why you see as you, or you experience as you, and not as the next person? I used to wonder that years ago. Why do I experience as me? And I guess that's a makeup of our brain that we cannot experience as another person. Although I guess empaths can. That's the best explanation I can have of that. I can give tender for that.
Okay. And so what's the purpose in reincarnation, according to your theory? Why?
I think, this is my opinion, I believe that the purpose of reincarnation is to experience all the multitude of things that we can experience. And, you know, remember that old song by Frank Sinatra, That's Life? One of the parts of that song was, I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn, and a king. I've been up and down and over and out, and I know one thing. And maybe the one thing that old Blue Eyes knew was that that's the purpose of existence, to experience life in all of its myriad possibilities.
Right. Okay, so hopefully you understand this. If you don't, we'll have to ask Melissa to explain it a little more. But I think I know what she's saying. Bruce, I'm curious to know if you feel the structure of our bodies, the DNA where we are incarnating, is where we find a structure that can hold our soul's frequency. So maybe,
Okay. That is an excellent question. Is it the DNA that holds the frequency? Some would suggest that it is, but if one looks at these Watson-Crick model of DNA and RNA too, that it may indeed be that, but I would have to counter that with Hameroff's and Penrose's theory of the microtubules of the brain, which is seen to exist in a quantum state. So it may indeed be that it's not the DNA, that it's the microtubules that vibrate in a quantum state, and that is singular to us. Again, it's all theory. But I do tend towards the microtubule theory.
have you ever encountered a human interacting with dinosaurs in a past life regression? Basically, this person, Mark, he had that in one of his, the first past life regression he did. So
I've never had anyone interact with a dinosaur. It's I don't think that my except for the Flintstones, I don't think dinosaurs and humans existed at the same time, did they?
I don't know. I mean, wasn't there cavemen? Or is that just in the shows? Or
Yeah.
Neanderthals or whatever?
Right, exactly. Fred and
Yeah.
Barney.
Yeah. Okay, so somebody think they want some more clarification. I'm sure I'm misunderstanding something fundamental in Bruce's talk. But when he describes consciousness as a kind of digital file stored as quantum foam, it sounds to me like he's talking about data that can survive physical death, e.g. memories, rather than consciousness or awareness. I'd love to hear a simplified explanation of what I'm missing.
Yeah, no, I think you've just given the explanation. That consciousness is in effect information, and data is information, and you can use whatever word you want to use, but I think it exists. Consciousness exists as information, and it is the information or data, which I believe I did make mention of that, that can be transferred. Just so you can transfer digital files, this data is transferred by some mechanism, or we speculate that it's transmitted by the little wormholes in the quantum foam, and that is the one that acts as the conduit.
Right.
Transfer the data or the information or the consciousness, whatever you choose to call it. Same words for different words for the same concept.
And John, if you weren't at our event last month with Sonia Rinaldi from Brazil, who does the instrumental transcommunication with spirits, she actually proves that memories do exist in consciousness, because when she would connect with these spirits through her, she used like a humidifier and lights, and when they would come back, they would always show portray a memory of another time, and then she would give that to the parents or whatever, and they would almost always find a photo of that person at a different time. So it shows that those memories do exist in consciousness.
And what are memories but information in
Yeah.
a different form?
Okay. If I've been a healer or a teacher in many lives, is that spiritual DNA?
No, I'm not sure that you could call it spiritual DNA, because now when you call it spiritual DNA, you're implying that there is. Wait a minute, do you use the word spiritual DNA?
Yep, that's what they asked.
I'm not sure. I don't subscribe to the theory of DNA as being a conduit of reincarnation, because in order to do that, you would have to show. That's one of the theories. One of the theories about reincarnation is that we are tapping into the DNA of genetic DNA of our ancestors. Well, maybe, but that's only if it can be shown that the holder or recipient of these particular memories, whether spontaneously or in a past life regression, is descended from genetically descended from genetically descended from whom they claim to be. I think that when you say that you were a healer in many lives, you're probably just drawn to that. Those are the experiences you want to have. Okay, let me tell you a little story then about. I wasn't going to tell this, but I mentioned something about having the capability of reincarnating into the past. I had a client. This is a female client, and she went through a number of different regressions with me, but she had an affinity for, I guess it's the 1920s, 1930s Paris, which was a great time of enlightenment, very exciting time to be alive in France and in Paris, along the left bank. You know, you had people like Ernest Hemingway and I guess some of the writers and the painters. Great things were done then. And she lived 3 lives during that time period, but she lived them as a guy. She's a woman in this life, went back 3 times, 3 different lifetimes spent in the 1920s, 1930s Paris. I think one was as a writer, one was as 2 were as writers, and one was as an artist. 3 different people. So I find that totally fascinating. That when we talk about the possibilities, now of course she could have been going back into into different realities in an alternate reality.
Stone would like to know how orbs connect to consciousness.
How what does?
Orbs. How do
Orb.
orbs connect to consciousness?
Orbs may be it depends. You know, if you have a scientific bent of mind, you'll say that an orb is nothing more than Saint Elmo's lightning, right? You heard of Saint Elmo's lightning. If you take a paranormal view of orbs, then you would think that they may indeed, orbs could indeed be, theoretically, and it's all theory, orbs could be the consciousness that was released from the microtubules of the brain and are in the form of, they're not dissipating, they're in a cohesive form within the orb. And that's the way they're experiencing for a limited amount of time before they go out into the universe, and then through the what we discussed here, the elements of quantum entanglement, quantum foam, string theory, make their way to another incarnation.
So if every moment we are branching into parallel lives, it means every possibility exists, which would mean
possibility.
There is no free choice, since every outcome occurs no matter what.
No
matter what. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct, because we're theorizing that you can create your particular life, your incarnation. So you do have the free choice to do that. The fact that every possible outcome exists, you're just tapping into a particular outcome. You're choosing that outcome.
Right. It's like when you're going down the freeway, you can choose exit A or exit B. Right. You have the choice to go down each one, and each might lead to a different outcome, but it's your choice.
Now we're getting to the realm of predetermination or not. So that's a topic for another show.
Yeah. Okay, so somebody else wants to know, where does the observer fit in this then?
Where does the observer fit into this thing? Well, we use that as when we discuss the dual slit experiments, that it was the observer that can change the outcome of that particular experiment from a particle, from a electron being a wave or a particle. It's the observer which changes that. So by implication, perhaps the observer can change the outcome of certain things that happen within not particularly their life here, but the observer can change what will happen in their future lives, in their incarnations.
Right. Could Bruce suggest a few books on these subjects?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can suggest any book by Robert Lanza. I just finished reading 3 of his books. It begins with biocentrism, then beyond biocentrism. Then there was a third one, which has biocentrism in the title. The name escapes you right now. And he also wrote a novel that incorporates all of these elements called Observer, appropriately enough.
Yeah, you should actually do a book list and share it in your group and in my groups. I think people like that.
And you do. A matter of fact, by reading that novel, you will learn an awful lot of science too.
Yeah. So, also Mark Anthony has a book on the subject. Yeah. So, have you ever had a client who only had past lives on other sides or on other planets or realms other than Earth? And this is from a friend of mine. I won't say his name, but he thinks this is his first time on Earth. He's he's been on other planets, but not here before, he feels.
I've been almost 50 years, I've been doing past life regressions. I've regressed thousands of people. I've never had someone from another planet. So I question it. I think it might be confabulation. Just never happened to me.
Um, let's see. Okay, so Mark has a question. Mark Anthony, quantum physics like Werner Heisenberg and Max Planck
Like,
were interested in Hinduism because its concepts about time seem to parallel quantum physics theory that time doesn't exist. Plus,
hmm.
Hindus believe your next life can be in the past. What is your position on the parallel between Hinduism and quantum physics?
Well, I see many parallels there. And from just what he said, the fact that it believes that time does not exist, and um, and in its own way, I do believe that it does talk about primacy of the observer, but it expresses it a different way. So yeah, I think there are many parallels between that and quantum physics, between Hinduism and quantum physics.
Okay, do you think the soul can reincarnate into the same lifespan? So I
Yeah,
think,
we discussed that. Yeah, that's a replay or a redo. Uh, it does seem, and I've had that happen with some of my clients, and it baffled the hell out of me the first time that happened because they were talking about the same life, but there were always subtle differences in that life. They could not explain it, and it baffled them too. But yeah, it sounds strange, it sounds odd, but I think you can choose to come back into the same life.
and
Now,
have
I
you
think
had
if you
many,
do that, if you do that, you're going to look for different experiences. I hesitate to say, you're not going to make the same mistakes. I don't think anything is a mistake. It's a learning process. It's a learning opportunity.
right? I think some of us who have had NDEs like me, I feel like I'm actually cramming a few different lives into one because what I'm experiencing now and living is nothing that I experienced the first part of my life.
Hmm.
So it kind of feels like rather than having to do this in another lifetime, not that I won't have other lifetimes, but I'm just cramming a few extra ones in this one. So
You're getting it all in now. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I always kind of was that overachiever who had to do everything to the extreme, I guess.
Getting as much as you can from the buffet table of life.
That's right. Uh yeah, yeah. Mark Anthony's book is called The Afterlife Frequency, which is great.
Oh,
And
that's it. Okay.
yeah, and he actually talked to our group about it um I guess wow, a couple years ago.
Hmm.
So where are we at? Do you believe that a child prodigy of any skill, art, music, scientist, or craftsman, is displaying skills gathered from a previous incarnation and perhaps enhanced between the lives on Earth?
Yeah, I do believe that. I believe that some of these child prodigies are bringing over certain skills that they had in another life. They may be improving upon those skills in this life too. You ever think about that? They had that propensity, they had that talent. They may not have had the opportunity to express it in that particular life. They may have been thwarted, and now they choose to have this experience again, but now they choose to fulfill that experience.
Yeah.
No, think
Okay.
you look at these some of these artists, 3, 4 years old, they're just beautiful paintings. I can hardly draw stick figures. I look at these kids who can do that. It's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. Um, so Stone would like to know why some can bring back wounds from past lives, birthmarks. So she's saying physical wounds, not just the other, but actual birthmarks, whip marks, etc.
Yeah, that's very common. And it seems it seems in my experience and what I have read, the researchers, that is usually from um, people who have died before their time at a very young age in a previous life, and those birthmarks seem to come through to this particular life. Yeah. I believe they are. Not in every case, obviously. I mean, it could be just a plain old beauty mark. Could be anything. But in many instances, it does seem to be the case. Now, the purpose of that, I don't know. I've thought about that many times. Why? To remind them of something? I don't know. Or maybe there is no reason. Maybe it just is what it is.
Well, I know that people who have two different colored eyes, which I have, that there's a lot of theories about why they come into life with that,
Mm.
and it's quite fascinating when I was reading some of the different theories of how your past life, based on, if you were a shaman or whatever, would then come into this life. So who knows? Okay, so Richard says, it is my understanding that when reading their Akashic records, it's very difficult to discern whether the life you're watching, experiencing, reading is one you were personally connected to or not, due to the basic oneness of all. How do you deal with this?
Yeah, that's a theory that I think the Akashic Records is meant as a metaphor. I doubt that there's actually a library up there with fine oak trimmings and a librarian who's shushing you all the time. But I think it's a great metaphor. It's a great metaphor, and you might be taught what Jung called the super consciousness, the cosmic unconscious, and I think it's the same thing. That's what you're tapping into. It might not have been you. You might indeed have played that role in a play at one time. By I'm using the play as an analogy of a lifetime. But it might have been something that was also a part of your soul group too, and you're tapping into those memories.
Right. Yeah, and there's definitely lots of other names for the
Yeah.
Akashic. I mean,
Didn't I believe Young called it? Carl Jung called it cosmic unconscious. Yeah.
right. Which is good that you answered that, because somebody did want you to stick some Carl Jung in there with all of this. And maybe most of you know, but Carl Jung had two NDEs, which is pretty cool.
Mm.
And and also like that, the speaker we had last month, Sonia Rinaldi, doing her experiments and proving that consciousness exists, memories exist. That's the same as our Akashic records. It's just she didn't necessarily say that they're stored in a library or whatever, but it's the same concept that these memories, they don't disappear. They're stored somewhere, and they're easy to access if you know what you're doing, I guess. But
Yeah, the consciousness memories are, in a sense, energy, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So they exist as some form of data. And in whatever metaphor you choose to use, Akashic records or whatever.
you know what's amazing? I was just thinking about that. I mean, that means when you've been at your worst times, and whatever you did, that memory is there.
Mm.
It's always there. When you were on your worst and you act a little crazy, that's there. But by the same token, when you were loving and taking care of people and offering kindness, that's there too.
That's there too, and it's what we choose to tap into and what we choose to remember. And
Yeah,
I use that in hypnotherapy.
right. But it's all recorded.
Mm.
Maybe just has a different name, and maybe they don't really record it. It's just it is, and the unconsciousness, the collective unconsciousness.
I do a type of past life regression called a karmic connection, and in that karmic connection, I have them experience the past life, and I have them experience a past life in which they did something positive, act of kindness, selflessness, but I also have experienced something that was not too kind. It could be murder, deceit, whatever they did. So I haven't experienced both sides of the coin. That's interesting what people come up to. They'll come up with because I asked them to tell me about it. What did you experience when I had you when I had you experience the unpleasant nature, your unpleasant nature?
Yeah, we did
And
that. You and I did that.
yeah, the other side of the coin too. Yeah,
And it was not a fun experience, if you remember. I have not been able to listen to the recording since. Do you remember?
it just will do that.
And so for you guys to know, it was so and which you can explain. I want you to explain how you do that. But so you can decide which kind of past life you want to look at. And so for me, I chose, my karmic past lives, which is
Yeah.
the past life mostly responsible for my life now. Well, I'd already had some ideas about this, because of things that were going on, but I didn't know for sure. And then and I was a Black woman in
Yeah. I remember.
1863, and my whole family was murdered, and I was murdered. I was drugged behind a cart, and it was a huge thing. But
Mm.
what was interesting is just knowing that happened explained a lot. So when we get there, I want to save a little time so that you can explain, for people who haven't had past life, and then how we're going to do the thing on the 24th so that people can
Yeah,
choose. But let's get through these. What time is it?
it's
Oh, okay, we have time. Good. It's 4:16 here. Um, so let me just get through these other questions, and then I want to kind of talk about that stuff. And also, even why do you want to know your past lives? Because I knew after my NDE that I will know when it's time to know, but right now it doesn't matter. And then I got the calling that's like, oh yeah, now it's time to know. And then I did the first time with another person, and then again, and each time has been perfect at that time of my life when it could help whatever I was dealing with that I dragged through from the other life. So yeah, I want you to talk about that, but let's answer these. I've read a number of Dolores Cannon books, and in more than one book, she has regressed people with past lives on other planets. Okay, so that's just a comment. Okay, so and yeah, Tanya, it does happen.
it does
It's just
happen.
he hasn't had, because my nephew that's reincarnated that I still communicate with, he's on another planet. And okay, so you had clients who see future lives, and if so, do the future lives seen by one client seem consistent with the future lives seen by a different client?
Here's an interesting, it's called future life progression. And years ago, I first started doing these back in the early 80s. And I used to do seminars where I do like 2 or 3 different regressions during the course of. I rent a hotel room, run an ad in the paper, do it there. And the last one I did was always going to be a future life regression. I finally stopped doing them because they're the toughest one to do. You get experiences all over the map. You're going to get one person go to a utopian existence. Then you're going to get to the next person, because I asked them, because it's a group regression. Then I'll say, well, what did you experience? They'll say, it was like a Mad Max scenario. Yeah. So I believe that in the future lives represent possibilities and probabilities, and probably alternate timelines too that they're accessing. And it was the hardest thing. It was the hardest one for people to get. So I stopped doing it. Because I'd have a lot of people just sit there and not get anything, get no reaction out of them.
So, so let's go to karma. What do you think of the concept of karma in reincarnation? And I'm going to add to that, you know, in your understanding, and also is there a difference in what you understand versus like maybe how Yogananda and some of the Hindus view karma and reincarnation?
Yeah, in most cases, they look upon karma as retributive justice. I definitely do not believe that. I believe that we're acting in a play. I don't believe there's punishment. What are you going to put? Let's think about this. I know what you're going to say. Even with Hitler, okay, everybody brings up Hitler. Okay, what happened to Hitler after Hitler is dead? How are you going to punish? How are you going to punish a body that no longer exists? I'm sure that the soul was just as aghast at what Hitler did, okay, as that person could be. Karma, and I don't believe in karma as retributive justice. I believe that it's the experiences we choose to have, we choose to make. I think in the afterlife, when these things happen, and let's say I killed you, you killed me, during the afterlife, we sit down, we talk about it, we laugh about it, we have a drink or 2 or 3, and we realize that this was a role that we chose to play, a role that we chose to play in that. Because when it happens, you know, think about it. When the play ends, the people go home, right? The people go home. In the movie with Hannibal Lecter, nobody ran after him after filming and arrested him for eating a person's brain because it was a play, it was an act, and that's what it amounts to in our lives. It's just something that we choose to do. We choose to take part in the play for a reason, known probably to have those experiences. But when you think about that, who is there? What is there to punish? The body's gone. You're going to punish the soul? The soul didn't do those acts. The body did those acts. And people forget that. They don't see, for some reason, they refuse to see the dichotomy between, and I suppose it's natural, between the soul and the body. And it's not the same.
Yeah, you know, you just actually said what the Course in Miracles says too. Like, it's the body doing that, it's not the soul. So it's just interesting because, as you know, we have this whole what do you call it when it's happening again, but with somebody else? You know, and if it hadn't have been for the collective unconscious at the time, we wouldn't have had Hitler. Well, now we've got this collective unconscious that has brought us this current president. So, yeah. What would you say on that, without being too political? Because I know your feelings.
Okay,
but in relation to this,
repeat the question.
Well, okay, so we talked about Hitler,
right,
and how he represents the collective unconsciousness and what he was doing, as awful as it was. Well, actually, let's start there. Why do you think that happened? And was there any?
During the time of the Second World War, some people did some remarkably brave things, remarkably unselfish things. And perhaps what the Nazis, we would say Hitler, but also there were other people involved through the Nazis, part of that purpose was to bring out the best in certain people.
Right. And that's sometimes hard for people to see. They see all the atrocities,
Yeah.
but they don't
You see
see.
all the unpleasantness. Exactly.
Yeah. So
The worst kind of regression to do is when you, and it's happening more and more now, is when you take a person back and they go back to concentration camp experience. Not very pleasant, but it's happening more and more now because we're getting to the time now. Theoretically, there's about 60 to 80 years between incarnations for those who follow a particular timeline, a particular time pattern. And we're getting to the time where the people are being reborn were alive during the Second World War, and by the simple math, some of them will have been in concentration camps.
Right. Okay, let's go to walk-in souls. What do you think about walk-in souls? And have you experienced anything like that in a past life regression?
You know, I have experienced that. And because I always look for a logical explanation to this. And it seems to me that it could be the energy or the consciousness that is released from a person who passes away and then walks into the body and inhabits the body of another person because they're not ready to move on. I don't see it very often, but that's my explanation for that.
Oh, so the walk-in wasn't ready to move on to the next.
Yeah, we weren't ready to move on. My other explanation is schizophrenia, but we don't want to go there.
Right. Wow, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. That maybe a soul who's not ready to move on is gonna, well, I guess that happens sometimes with what we would call
because
demons
a soul can not experience the way a human does. Some even believe that the souls don't have the emotions that a human does. And so they may choose to walk into another body so that they can have those physical experiences, which they can't have if they're a spirit.
So Richard has a great question. How do you discern between a nearby life and one you were personally involved in? So I'm thinking, Richard, are you trying to say discern between the life you're currently having versus a nearby one, a recent one? I think he might be saying that.
The same soul. Does he mean nearby in terms of
a nearby life, so a close life?
Chronology?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm doing a past life regression, that's easy enough to find out because I'm grilling them. I'm like a detective. I'm like Sergeant Joe Friday, putting the spotlight on them,
right.
Telling them just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. We can do that. So I'm going to find out where we are, what we're dealing with, when we're dealing with.
Yeah. And I do want to mention that when Bruce does this, he is very scientific. This is not just like, I mean, he said, how many questionnaires do you have? How many different
regressions?
Yeah, that you offer, but then when you test people, what is the best way that they remember information or gather information?
Oh yeah. When I do that on a private basis, of course you can't do it on a group basis.
Right.
But, it's a system I developed many years ago, back in the mid '80s, which I developed for. At the time, I created and I was the director of a chain of hypnotherapy clinics, private hypnotherapy clinics in LA and Orange County. We eventually grew to being the largest network of hypnotherapy clinics in the nation, and like 18 therapists, 21 offices all over the place in Southern California. It was crazy time back then. But we dealt mostly with as it was back then, weight loss and smoking cessation. That's what people used to come for. And I developed a system of quantification that allowed me to pinpoint how I can best how I can best influence a person with hypnotic suggestion. Because not everybody accepts suggestion in the same way. So what I would look at, and then I would look at a person's hemispheric brain dominance. Are they right brain or left brain? Okay, because they process information differently, the left brain and the right brain. I look at from an NLP, or neuro linguistic learning process sense. How do they process information? Do they process information auditorily, visually, or kinesthetically? Auditorily, of course, by hearing things, visually by watching or reading, and kinesthetically by doing or feeling. So we look at that. We look at their hypnotic susceptibility. And then I was able to translate this into my work with past life regression and adapt it for that. So that's what Sean went through.
Yeah.
See, because as a hypnotherapist, the only tools I have at my disposal are my words, my voice, and the words I speak to a person. I'm not a plumber. I don't use I don't use a wrench. You're not a carpenter. I don't use a hammer. Those are my tools. So I have to make the best of what I have, not using those particular tools. So it gives me a heads up.
Right.
To more personalize the session. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and all your sessions are really involved. I mean, the pre paperwork and the tests and all that kind of stuff.
And even in the group sessions, we don't jump right into it. Even when in a group session, I don't say, hello, how are you? Close your eyes, shut up, and listen to me. Okay, we go into a long explanation of what they can expect to to experience during the course of the session, and how we're going to do it, step by step.
So let's get through these questions quickly, and then I want you to talk about what we're going to do on the 24th so people can understand how that's going to work. Yeah. So somebody wants to know where God comes into all this.
God may be. Now, that's an interesting question. If consciousness created the universe and not the other way around, universe did not create consciousness, is it that there is an overlying, all-encompassing consciousness that may indeed be a God, a supreme being, whatever you want to call it, God, the big kahuna, the grand poobah? That's a matter of personal belief. And I personally believe that there is a cosmic consciousness that overrides all things, oversees all, maybe it oversees all things, and was formed, in my opinion, was formed at the same time souls were formed, at the time of the Big Bang, about 14 billion years. Yeah, 14 billion years ago.
Yeah. Okay, so don't we think of the body as a shell for our soul? The soul's in the brain, which is part of the body, make decisions and help choices. I believe the purpose of reincarnation is soul evolution, isn't it? Otherwise, why there is even reincarnation?
I believe that too. I believe that it is soul evolution to come closer to, again, now we're getting into God, oneness with God, or oneness with the universe, using the universe as a metaphor for God, and that we go up the rungs of the ladder of soul evolution. I did a show on this, and where we discussed soul evolution through what they call baby souls, young souls, mature souls, old souls. and they each have different characteristics. But the soul progresses through that up the ladder of soul evolution through experience. Some go faster than others.
Okay, so here's a big one. This is the biggest that, like in our life after death group, that thank God got hacked with over 1 million people. But this is a question representative of what we got every day in that group. I don't understand why souls who commit evil and atrocities should not experience moral consequences. I don't believe that victims of crimes always choose to suffer or experience horrific pain or torture or are simply playing a part. I believe that type of justification is dangerous and leads to a blame the victim mentality and moral irresponsibility. If both victim and abuser are simply playing their part and afterwards they both die and have a friendly drink. So, and as you know, I mean, this is probably the hardest thing for people that perhaps haven't had, a whole lot of, mystical, spiritual experiences. This is the hardest thing for everyone to think or to deal with. If you have, like I said, if you haven't had some of these experiences, it's really hard.
I
So,
know. I can remember teaching my certification class here in Huntington Beach years ago, and someone sitting in the front, and we got into a discussion about that. And he says, "I don't believe you. Why would I choose to lead a life of that, of poverty, of having bad things happen to me, being murdered, or being tortured?" And I said, well, let's think about that. Yeah. But do you realize that what you perceive as a bad life, how long did that bad life last? Let's use the biblical 70, right? 70 years. In the terms of the afterlife, that's over like this in the twinkling of an eye, and all that is gone. That's the only way I can describe doing that. That I can describe that is that these things happen. We, for some reason, known only to our souls or to those entities that are in charge of all of this, our soul guide. Some people use the concept of the council of elders, that they put us through these things with our agreement. And the question is, why would I agree to do this? Why would I do this? That's why, because it's going to be over in the twinkling of an eye. And it's like a bodybuilder, no pain, no gain. They put themselves through a lot of pain to get what they perceive as a perfect figure.
right. In Hawaiian Huna, if you've studied Hawaiian Huna at all, pain is the kahuna's teacher and his best friend.
That's right.
And there are people, I'm still waiting to see people that, can learn without a little pain, because I would love to choose that route. But for me, all my growth has happened through pain and, near-death experiences, spiritual experiences, losing things. And, I am careful because technically, I guess I could say that I'm a victim. But the way that I look at all of that is that it all happened for me, not to me. And it was for my highest and best growth. And now, as I look back on all these things that had happened and dysfunctional family and all that awful stuff, I'm actually grateful for these people. And I mean, they helped me learn because that abuse, that trauma, all that stuff, it helps teach us to love ourselves. And then we choose, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. And as I start loving myself, I'm not a victim, and you won't treat me as such. So, there's multiple lessons that can be learned. And we just never know what the lesson is for somebody else. We can know what our lesson is or try to.
Yes, we can know what our lessons are, but what is the rhyme or reason for them having to go through that? We will never know.
Right.
You can make conjectures. You can look for reasons. You're not going to find them.
Right. Yeah.
I hate to be trite, but it is what it is. I'm sorry.
Right. And
I always think of it this way. Maybe in your next life, probably, not maybe, probably in your next life, you're going to get a pass. Okay, you went through all of this. Now it's time for Easy Street.
Well, unless you sign up for the master class.
Yeah.
I seem to keep signing up for master classes. I haven't chosen one of those lives yet where I just sit on my yacht and have Mai Tais. Maybe next time.
I do believe that we do have the ability to choose easier lives.
Yeah.
Like a summer vacation.
Yeah.
They don't all have to be horrific.
Yeah. I know that too. I've actually even asked once in a while. I'm like, okay, I'm getting the message. You can chill down. Doesn't need to be so strong. Let's, so we can. Okay, so this is a good thing. Melissa is saying, I agree, we learn through pain, but do you also agree that we can learn through joy?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And Melissa, I would say when we're in joy is the only time we're connected with God. And it's the only time we're in the present moment. And that is when we do get to learn what is real, is in that present moment. Because if we're in the future, that's not the present moment, because we're dragging the memories and the pain of the past into the future. And that's when we're not with God. So that joyful moment when and whoever you think God is. But that's true. And we can learn through joy if we listen to all the amazing messages that are sent to us, when we're in joy and when we're listening. Okay. So with that, I think we answered most of the questions. And if you guys have more questions, you can actually put them on the Hawaiian IANDS YouTube when we put the replay up. And you can also ask Bruce in my groups or in his Facebook group that I put the link in there. So could you now talk to everyone, tell them about how a regular past life regression works, and then how we're going to be doing as a group, what we're going to do on the June 24th.
Yeah, a regular past life regression would be whereby through hypnosis, we take you into a hypnotic state and then go back, whatever your particular purpose is in having the past life regression, take you back to a past life. And quite simply, the quickest explanation that I can think of is then ask you questions which you answer would you answer out loud. And then and that's some substance of the past life regression. It may be it may be to learn about your karmic connections, who your soul group was. It may be between lives regression, which is technically is not a past. Technically, it's not a past life regression, but there are elements of a past life regression. It could be past life therapy. Some people undergo regression for physical or emotional ailments and phobias, fears, eating disorders. So in other words, for specific challenges that they happen to be having at that time, we can go through that. We can find the causative factor or the lifetime that is the lifetime, but sometimes a specific incident that caused that particular problem area, that particular challenge, and then expiate it. So that's a type of past life regression. The one that we're going to be doing on the 24th, this is a because it's a group regression. Obviously, I can't have people answer me during a group regression. If we've got 100 people out there, the thing is going to take, it's going to take 2 weeks to do. So we take you back through hypnosis. I'll explain hypnosis during the session, and take you back to a lifetime. I give you a choice of 6 different periods to experience, which means 6 different lifetimes. Your subconscious mind will choose one, and then we'll take you through the experience of that one. We're going to look at things like who you are, where you are, when you are, what kind of life did you live, what did you do in that particular life, who are some of the people that you lived during that life, and are they around? Did they show up in this particular lifetime? Are these people still with you? So we look at the different community events. What happened during these particular events? Whatever can happen during a lifetime, that's essentially the parameters that I'm going to use to take you through a past life regression.
Are you going to send the questionnaires out before for people to choose which one they want to do, or just at the beginning?
Say that again.
The questionnaire. Have some of those questionnaires that like you've
The
sent to me.
trip, that you
Yeah, I
can.
don't remember what you call them.
Okay, where I looked at your hemispheric brain dominance and things like that.
Right. Yeah. And
Oh,
how you
no, that would not come in. It can't be done in a group
in
regression.
a group. Okay.
No way, because I'm not working with the person individually. I'm working with them as a group. So I'm asking them questions, and they're answering those questions in their own mind.
Right.
And remember,
Yeah. So Stacy, his regular past life regressions, are they 500? Your individual. Is that 500, 400? What is it?
yeah, regular past life regression, private past life regression is done individually.
Right. And
Individual one-on-one.
right. She just wants to know how much, and that's 500, right?
Yes.
And just so
And that's yeah.
yeah, I was just going to share with Stacy that it's like 2 meetings. You get these questions. Well, you explain it to her.
Exactly. It's a 2-session program. So we spend a lot of time talking to you for learning, explaining the different types of past life regression and what your what you want to do for, what you hope to accomplish through having a past life regression. That's probably one. I also record the session for the person.
Right. And then you go through it, you do that you do the session, and then you go through it afterwards.
And then we're able to do the testing procedures with that too.
Yeah. So the $500 represents several meetings.
It's a 2-session program.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a free consultation, so we can see if you're a fit for the program or not. Okay. And then from there, then we do the second session is a clinical interview and evaluation, where I'll fully explain what we're going to do. And then the second session will be the regression itself. Regression takes anywhere about an hour and a quarter to about an hour and a half.
But what we're going to do on June 24th will be a group. And it's only $47.
$47. Normally I charge $97 for the workshop, but because we're doing this through Sean's group, it'll be $47. And you're going to everything you would get in a normal session, except that I can't personalize it for you. It's impossible to do that when you got 100 people sitting out there.
But you can also afterwards, you can take, yeah.
I will go through every experience. I will ask you every question that I would ask in a private session.
Yeah, and we did this in a group a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it was really, that was like past lives and NDEs and stuff. Like, wasn't that? We were connecting with our NDEs, our
Yeah,
spiritual.
what we were doing, we were doing like a facilitated NDE is what we were doing, and we combined that with a between lives regression. If I
Yeah.
remember correctly, what we did, yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we had the people re-experience their NDE. Because a lot of
Right.
people don't remember. NDE happened 10, 20 years ago. And so we were able to bring up that particular memory and have them revivify and re-experience that NDE.
Right.
What we're doing on the 24th, this is a past life regression. Actual past life. I do everything that I would do in a private session, but it's done in a group.
Yeah. And what's nice is, I don't know if we can do this in this thing, but so like for me, the very first time I ever did past life regression, it wasn't with Bruce. It was another friend of mine who had been a speaker to our group. But in that past life regression, what I wanted to know is I've had this reoccurring thing that I know comes from other lives, and it was betrayal. So I wanted to go look back. Why do I experience this, and why does it bother me so much? And
And
so in doing that past life, I was able to go back and look at that and then do a clearing. And honestly, uh, anything that feels like betrayal now doesn't affect me like it did. So that to me, that's the kind of reason to do a past life regression. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're, Cleopatra, or, what matters is what baggage, in my experience, what baggage have you brought from these past lives into
See,
this life?
but theoretically, you can have the same benefit from a group situation, because one of these suggestions, or what I say to a person within hypnosis is called a suggestion, is that after the session, over the next few days, the next few weeks, more and more things will occur to you, will come to your mind, more insights from your higher self will come to your mind, will come into your mind. So in different times during the day, you're having a cup of coffee, you're driving in your car, you're doing something, and all of a sudden something pops into your mind. And I do that routinely in both my private sessions and both my group sessions.
Right.
So it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving,
Yeah.
because the human memory is notoriously faulty. I mean, I'm a great example of that. I lose my cell phone 10 times a day. But when we do give suggestions that you will remember more and more as time passes, I've found that very effective. And I get calls back from people, weeks later. Oh, I just remembered this. Let me tell you about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you get these dates and then later stuff happens, because like I was this Black woman in 1863, and then later, Harriet Tubman, if you guys know Underground Railroad, she started coming into my life. And in doing the numbers, we knew each other at a certain, and it was all fitting together. That's what's pretty cool. So it takes a while sometimes, but
Mm.
it can fit together. So Cece wants to know, for an individual session, is the free assessment to determine whether the regression can be done successfully. I have been having difficulty being hypnotized. And maybe you could actually explain what hypnotism really is. Because I think a lot of people, they think
A
they're
lot of
going to be
people
in a
don't understand
trance and
because they don't understand. They have misconceptions of what hypnosis is. Everybody can be hypnotized. Let me take that back. The only people who cannot be hypnotized are people who are clinically speaking morons, imbeciles, or idiots. And I'm not being facetious when I say that. Their IQ has to be below 40 before we say they cannot be hypnotized. Now, I may not be able to hypnotize a person to get up on the stage and quack like a duck, or bark like a dog, or cluck like a chicken, unless they want to. And that's why that's one of the misconceptions that hypnosis and hypnotherapy have to labor under, is the stage hypnotist. People go to the state fairs, they go to a nightclub and see those things. And you have to remember that everybody who gets up on stage volunteered. Okay? The hypnotist said, have some volunteers to be a part of our show. Take me, take me. What does that tell you? They're there to have a good time. They're volunteering to have a good time. Not everybody will do what the hypnotist asks them to do. One person will quack like a duck, they won't bark like a dog. Why? Who knows why a person would do something like that. Other people just won't do anything. They sit there like lumps. But what the stage hypnotist does, he puts them through things called suggestibility test, which determines for him the likelihood that those people are going to go along with the crazy things he's going to ask them to do. And let's face it, in these situations, these people are usually 3 sheets to the wind. They're going to do it anyway. Okay, when he gets up there, and they're the type of person who, after a few drinks, they put a lampshade on their head and dance around the room. So no problem with that. So everybody can be hypnotized. Because all hypnosis is, and as we'll explain that, it's a matter of brainwave levels. You got 4 basic brainwave levels: beta, alpha, theta, and delta. You go into and out of these brainwave levels, you sink down. Hypnosis is basically an alpha level of brainwave activity, maybe a little lower for some people if you go into a deeper state of hypnosis. Everybody goes into and out of alpha 5 to 30 times a minute. So from 5 to 30 times a minute, you are in effect being hypnotized. My job as a hypnotherapist or as a past life regression therapist is to perpetuate that level of alpha, at least alpha brain wave activity, maybe go down a little deeper into theta for the length of time it takes for me to do the session. So as I said, there's no such thing as, now everybody says that people will say, I didn't feel hypnotized. Well, it's because it was what they were expecting to feel. You're not tranced out into some kind of zombie-like state. That's Hollywood. That's not real life. Basically, for our purposes, hypnosis is relaxation. You're very pleasantly relaxed. The same kind of state you're in when you're sitting down, reading a book, watching a favorite movie on TV, just pleasantly relaxed, focused. Your attention is focused. So no concerns about not being hypnotized.
Yeah, and I will tell you, Cece, yeah, it's not what you think it is at all. And anything that, because I've gone to those, stage hypnotherapists, it's not like that.
They're called myths and misconceptions.
Yeah. And you basically will be in a relaxed state. You are awake. You're not under, but you're in a deeply relaxed state. And the biggest problem for me has been my ego. So like my ego, when some of this stuff starts happening, the very first time, I should say, because I went back to the time of Jesus, and all of a sudden it's like, my ego was like, yeah, no, you weren't here at the time of Jesus. And that can be the biggest problem, is that self-questioning. So if you just stop questioning and let it go, wherever you're led, wherever Bruce leads you, go there and don't question. But you're not going to be completely under. You're just going to be completely relaxed in that state. What do you call that state, by the way, Bruce?
What do you call that state?
Yeah, the state where they're, where they're hypnotized, but it's more of a relaxed state, right?
That is the hypnotic state, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Other things are anomalies where the person doesn't remember, or they're tranced out, or they have amnesia for what happens. Those are anomalies. That's not hypnosis. By the way, if you go to my website, drkaloski.com, you will see a page devoted to an explanation of hypnosis called, appropriately, About Hypnosis. It goes through all of the myths and misconceptions and explains those myths and misconceptions. And it talks about the different things that I do. You'll see pages there devoted to hypnotherapy, pages there devoted to past life regression. And by the way, that I think I told you that particular landing page for of the upcoming workshop, everything's working now, and they can go there and
right. So, yeah. So you can go to this link that I just put in. You can sign up now, or you can wait later, or you can ask more questions.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yes, he teaches self-hypnosis. That's not what we're doing in this thing, but he can teach you that as a regular client, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's because that's what he teaches people, you know, how to quit smoking or how to
Lose weight,
lose weight.
overcome anxiety, goal setting, procrastination, you name it.
Just a sec. Yeah, so May, you know, I hear you and I understand you, and this is the biggest, you know, you're not alone. There's
Go
millions of
there
people.
and go there to my website, read the About Hypnosis page. That will
Oh
discuss.
yeah, no, May's the one about you know, the Hitler stuff and you know, people doing awful stuff. She's, you know, that's hard for a lot of people. And you know, and May, I will tell you that after my last near-death experience, at some point, it made me sick to my stomach, and it was really hard. But I will never forget when I sat there and realized and admitted to myself that the life that I've had is the life that I created. And I created this life not to punish myself, not to hurt myself, but for example, because with all the narcissist and antisocial personality disorder people in my family and addicts, the fact that they couldn't love me, it helped me to learn to love myself. So yeah, you know, it's hard to look at abuse and torture and all that kind of stuff, but I, I real swear to you that it is possible to see it another way.
Yeah.
So, but
Perspective.
yeah,
To gain and gather a different perspective.
right. And in fact, in A Course in Miracles, that's all we say when we ask for a miracle. Let me see this differently.
Yeah.
And if you just pray and ask, pray, meditate on this thing and just ask, let me see it differently. And at some point, I guarantee you will, because there is this alternate perspective.
Indeed.
And yeah. Okay. So we put all the links in. I think we've covered everything. And I put in Bruce's Facebook group, which is a great group.
Yeah, you're invited to join Past Life Explorers.
Yeah, and it's got like 31,000 people or something like that. So it's a
No, just about 19,000, little under.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so but anyway, and then
Oh, someone asked about soul evolution. When you join the group, I'm going to give you a free soul evolution guide so you know where you are on the ladder of soul evolution. So that comes with joining the group.
joining the Facebook group.
Yeah, join the Facebook group.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But
So
you have to ask for it. I just don't. I wouldn't automatically send it out. You have to ask for it. Tell me that you actually. There's a question there. When you join, there's several questions. Would you like me to send? One of them is that. Would you like me to send you the Soul Evolution Guide? And then you just put down your email address, and we'll send it right out to you.
okay, awesome. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, email me, or I mean, put messages in my group, in Bruce's group, and also on the replay. When we get the replay done, you can ask more questions there. And yes, I'm going to try to do the Facebook group again. Bear with me. Here is a link to his Facebook group. So, okay, we're so glad that you all came. And this has been really fun, Bruce.
It has
Look,
been, and I thank you. You had some challenging questions there.
yeah, it's fun. You know, it's fun to talk about this kind of stuff.
It is.
You know, most NDEers are feelers, you know, and experiencers that don't, you know, they didn't approach it that way. So it's kind of interesting to you know, to learn about it from that perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, you know, we experience things, we just don't know how to explain them. So yeah, I just stuck the Facebook group again. Hopefully you saw it. Did you guys all see it? Or does somebody need it again? And we're gonna go from there. Okay, so I stuck it in again. If all of you check out his group, go to YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll get a replay of
You'll
this.
see, and if you go to, I don't know if you have it up there, but my YouTube, my YouTube channel, it has 30 so different videos that I've done, well, interviews that I've done, and also the lives that I've done in my Facebook lives that I've done in my group on a variety of different topics.
Yeah, your Facebook website that I put in there will link. It'll show the YouTube, right?
Because we talked about some, and on those those lives, we talked about some really fun stuff. Really fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I think if you guys go to his website, there will be a link to the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
and
you'll see the link to my YouTube channel in the website.
Right. So yeah, hope you guys will join us on the 24th. It's going to be really amazing. I know that the one we did about 2 years ago, everybody loved it. Everybody got insights into their NDEs and so forth. And I really think you'll enjoy it. So with that, I want to say aloha to everyone.
Aloha.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Yeah, and by the way, Bruce started getting into his past life regression here, living by where I live in Waikiki, right? When you were
I'm probably
in
only a
college.
couple. I'm a graduate of UH, or University of Hawaii.
Right.
I spent 7 years there.
Yeah, that's very
cool. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, everybody have a wonderful night. Please join us at the sharing group on the 17th. And then June 24th. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really exciting.
It'll be a lot of fun.
And of course, you're going to get past life regression for 1/10 of what it actually. Yeah.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you to Ned and David and everybody that was helping behind the scenes. And we will see you all soon. Aloha.
Aloha.